All right, let's dive in. We're taking a look at Confessions of a ChimpManZee today. And whoa, this book, this fictional memoir, it really throws some curveballs,
Mm?
about what it means to be human.
Definitely throws you for a loop.
Right. I mean, you've got this love triangle, some shadowy benefactor, and a scientific experiment that I guarantee will not see coming. But, and here's the thing, there's so much more going on beneath the surface of this wild story.
Yeah, it's like the author took these out there situations and used them to explore some really deep questions about, well, about the ethics of scientific research, about how smart animals really are, even about what consciousness really is. It gets you thinking for sure.
Absolutely. So we have Arthur, the main character, a pre-med student, smart guy,
Yeah.
maybe not applying himself,
Hmm.
and he ends up working at this primate research lab, mostly just cleaning cages for chimps and bonobos. Not exactly a dream job, right?
Not glamorous, no.
But here's where it gets interesting. The lab is funded by DARPA, and
Mhm.
there's this feeling that something big is going on, something maybe a little shady.
Definitely makes you think about that fine line between pushing science forward and, well, crossing ethical boundaries.
For sure. It's like all the debates we're having now about gene editing, AI, all that.
Exactly.
And on top of the whole DARPA thing, Arthur finds himself in the middle of this, a bit of a tangled web of relationships. He starts tutoring his boss's daughter, Denise. But then there are these two brilliant female researchers, Rosie and Sophia,
Hmm.
both of them catching his eye, and, well, let's just say things get complicated.
Classic love triangle, but with a lot more at stake.
Way more.
Yeah, and it's interesting how that triangle brings out different sides of Arthur. Denise is like this innocent, youthful energy. Rosie's all about that intellectual curiosity. And then Sophia, she's ambitious, driven.
Yeah, she's got that fire. So anyway, this whole love triangle situation starts to fall apart, and things get messy. Jealousy, a rival researcher named Boner stirring the pot, and then out of nowhere, this big event happens and Arthur ends up with a life-changing injury.
And that's where the book takes this sharp turn into sci-fi territory.
Oh, yeah.
Arthur ends up having this crazy surgery, like something out of a movie. Parts of his brain get transplanted into, get this, a chimpanzee named Jack.
Whoa. Mind-blowing. Right.
Totally. It makes you think, like, what does it even mean to be human if your mind can be put into another species' body?
Exactly. It's questioning all those things we assume separate us from animals, the ethics of it all. Like, is this even okay to do?
Heavy stuff.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how the book uses this fictional situation to reflect real-world ethical dilemmas. Like,
Yeah.
we're always pushing the limits of science, and this story forces us to confront what might happen if we go too far.
Definitely.
And just when you think it can't get any crazier, Arthur escapes from the lab with his chimpanzee family.
Huge turning point there.
Right, he's leaving that controlled lab environment and heading back to nature.
Yeah, it's both a literal journey into the wilderness, but also this exploration of his own identity. Totally. He's facing danger, trying to survive, dealing with other chimps, watching out for poachers. And then on top of all that, he meets the Aziza people, this hidden tribe of nocturnal hominids, like something out of a myth.
Yeah, they're almost like a whisper from the past, living in a totally different way, super connected to the natural world.
They have this deep connection to what they call the blood of life, which seems to represent this idea that everything is connected.
Right, like everything living is part of this one big web, a concept that Arthur, especially now that he's part chimp, really starts to get.
It makes you wonder if the author is drawing a parallel between the Aziza and how, like, modern society,
Yeah.
maybe we're losing touch with that connection to nature.
It's definitely something to think about.
For sure. And this whole encounter with the Aziza, it's just the beginning for Arthur. He's about to learn so much about himself, about humanity, about what it means to exist.
Yeah, it's going to challenge everything he thought he'd do.
Seriously, I'm totally hooked. This is more than just some sci-fi adventure. It's about what it means to be human, the ethics of science, our relationship with nature, all that. I can't wait to see what happens next. But before we get into that, what are your first impressions? What's jumped out at you so far?
You know, what really strikes me is how the author mixes those big scientific ideas
Yeah.
with these deep philosophical questions. It's not just about Arthur changing physically. It's about what that change tells us
Hmm.
about being human, about ourselves.
That's a great point. And I think that's what makes this book so powerful. It's not just a story, it's like this mirror reflecting our own hopes and anxieties
Yeah,
about science, about ethics, about our place in the world.
exactly.
And with Arthur out in the wilderness meeting the Aziza, facing down poachers, I think those questions are about to get even bigger and deeper.
Yeah.
So stay tuned as we keep going with this deep dive into Confessions of a ChimpManZee.
Absolutely. It's really something how Arthur's journey out in the wilderness.
Yeah.
It's like it mirrors his own inner struggles. He's wrestling with who he is, stuck between being human and being chimp.
Yeah.
And then Sophia and Rosie showing up again, those women from the lab. Well, it throws all those struggles into overdrive.
Yeah, you're right. It's like he can't escape his past, even out in the heart of Africa. Sophia, when she finds him alive, accusing him of murder, I mean, it really shows how tangled up their pasts are, how much pain there is.
And Sophia's anger, blaming Arthur like that,
Mm.
it makes you think about memory, about whose story is the real story. The book doesn't shy away from the idea that their memories might be messed up a little, twisted by their emotions.
Yeah, like, can we ever really know the truth, or are we all just telling ourselves stories? And then you have Rosie. She seems to accept Arthur, chimp body and all. I
Yeah.
mean, their relationship, it's definitely not conventional, but it shows this deeper connection, something that goes beyond just the physical.
Rosie's got this different kind of understanding. She's willing to look past the surface, to see who someone really is, their connection, the questions it brings up about relationships between species. It makes you rethink what we consider normal.
Totally. It challenges all our ideas about love, about being together, even about what it means to be human.
Absolutely.
But one thing I love about this book, it doesn't get all serious and preachy about these big ideas. Arthur's observations about humans, even from his chimp perspective, they're hilarious.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
It's got that great balance of deep thought and humor, never loses sight of that human element, even with Arthur being part chimp.
Right. It's that mix that keeps you hooked. But it's not all just personal struggles and jokes. There's this bigger picture unfolding, something that connects back to the Aziza and how they see the world.
The Aziza, they're more than just background characters in Arthur's story. They represent a whole different way of being, living in harmony with nature, guided by that reverence for the blood of life. And Arthur, he's experienced the artificial world of the lab and the raw reality of the jungle. He's in this unique position to connect those two perspectives.
That's a great point, that whole blood of life concept.
Yeah.
That interconnectedness, it feels key to understanding the Aziza and what the book is trying to say.
Absolutely. It goes beyond just respecting nature. It's recognizing that deep link between every living thing, something modern society, with its focus on the individual, has kind of lost.
Yeah, I see that. So we have Arthur straddling those human and chimp worlds, starting to grasp this ancient wisdom. But then you have DARPA, the ones behind his transformation. They're still out there. How does the book handle that tension between those forces?
That's where things get really interesting. Arthur escaping, meeting the Aziza, it's like it woke something up inside him. He's not just some experiment anymore. He's become this symbol of resistance, a challenge to DARPA's agenda. Their whole plan to use primate intelligence for their own purposes.
Wow, that's heavy. It's this huge moral dilemma, right? DARPA, they're all about progress, even if it means bending the rules. And then you have Arthur and the Aziza. They represent this more holistic, connected view.
And the book doesn't shy away from exploring that gray area in between. It makes you ask those tough questions about the cost of progress, the limits of science, our responsibility to nature.
It's like we're right there with Arthur, wrestling with these dilemmas. But as we head into the last part of our deep dive, I gotta ask, where does Arthur go from here? He's caught between these powerful forces, human and chimp, scientific and primal. What does the book say about his role in this whole clash of ideologies? So last we left off, Arthur's stuck in the middle of this crazy tug of war, all these different worlds pulling at him, different ideas about what's right. He's got the Aziza and their blood of life wisdom on one side, and then DARPA, the folks who made him into what he is, on the other. And let's not forget those poachers. They're a constant threat to Arthur, to the chimps, to the whole balance of the forest.
It's like the book's throwing everything it can at him, testing him at every turn. Does he side with DARPA, go back to his human roots, but risk them exploiting the Aziza, the forest? Or does he fully embrace the chimp life, but maybe cut himself off from any chance of bridging that gap between humans and the natural world?
Man, the suspense is killing me. And you mentioned the poachers, which that adds a whole other layer to this. They represent this destructive force,
Yeah.
Greed, no respect for the environment.
Yeah, it's like a reminder of what can happen when humans lose that connection to nature.
Exactly.
And the danger is real. For Arthur, for the Aziza, for everyone.
For sure.
But Arthur, Even in a chimp's body, he still thinks like a human. He understands us. The book shows how clever he is, how he uses that to outsmart the poachers, protect his troop.
It's like we're seeing both the best and worst of humanity in this story.
You know, the poachers, they're our capacity for destruction.
Right.
And Arthur, especially after being with the Aziza, he embodies that potential we have for empathy, for understanding.
I see that. But the conflict isn't just humans versus nature, right? You said there's tension
Yeah.
between different chimp groups, too.
Oh, absolutely. That's a big part of it. When those poachers show up, it throws everything off balance. More competition, more violence between the chimp communities. It's like this metaphor for how human actions can have ripple effects.
Yeah.
Even in places we think are untouched.
Wow, so many layers to this conflict. Humans against nature, humans against humans, chimps against chimps. And Arthur's caught right in the middle, trying to make sense of it all.
That's a lot.
It is.
And then, just when you think it can't get more tangled, the book throws in this twist. Researchers from the lab show up, they heard about the poachers, and now they're on the scene.
Whoa, talk about a reunion. I bet DARPA wants Arthur back, especially after seeing what he can do now.
Oh, there's definitely that scientific curiosity. They want to study him, figure him out, this unique being they created. But the book also hints at something darker, that potential for them to exploit him, use his abilities for their own purposes.
That's where those ethical lines get really blurry, right? It's not just about the experiment that changed Arthur, it's about what comes after. Do the researchers see him as a living being, someone with rights, or just as this valuable tool to control?
That's the big question the book leaves us with.
Man, that's heavy.
But there is a little bit of hope, you know. Rosie, she's still at the lab,
Yeah.
but she's starting to see the problems with how they do things.
Rosie, she's so interesting. She's caught between wanting to do science and knowing what's right. How does she affect what happens to Arthur?
Well, she becomes really important to him. She gives him information, helps him figure out what the researchers are going to do. Their connection, it's based on respect, on understanding. It shows that maybe there's a way to bridge the gap between scientists and,
Yeah.
well, and those who think we need to be more ethical in how we do research.
Like Rosie represents that ideal, science driven by curiosity, but also by compassion.
Exactly.
But we're nearing the end of the book, so gotta ask, how does this all wrap up, this whole web of conflict? What happens?
The ending, it's satisfying, but it also makes you think. There are no easy answers, no loose ends perfectly tied up, but it shows how powerful individual actions can be, how things can change.
Okay.
Arthur, he uses his chimp strength, his human mind, his understanding of both worlds. He protects his troop, keeps the Aziza safe.
That's powerful, especially in a world where it feels like everything's going wrong.
Yeah, it gives you hope that we can make a difference, even against the odds.
For sure.
And Arthur's story, even though it's made up, it leaves us with real questions. What does it mean to be human now, with science changing so fast? How do we treat the planet, other species? How do we bridge the divides between us to make a better future?
Those are questions that'll stick with people long after they finish the book. Confessions of a ChimpManZee. It's not just an adventure, it's a call to action. To look at ourselves, our choices, our place in this whole web of life.
Reminds us we're all connected, human and animal, past and present, and that what we do matters. It has an impact. And with that, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into this amazing book.
I agree. We've covered a lot. The ethics of science, what consciousness is, how to live sustainably. We hope this has given you some things to think about, new ways of seeing things, maybe even inspired you to check out Confessions of a ChimpManZee yourself.
And as always, we want to hear from you. What stood out? What made you think differently? Let's keep talking about these important ideas. Until next time, keep those minds working and keep diving deep.